If Texas is so strong, why does it feel like you're paying more for less space and less neighborhood? This video isn't about vibes. It's about the mechanics. Population growth pulls demand forward. Housing supply doesn't keep up, and the result is a weird squeeze where the state's personal income can outpace the US, while your rent and commutes act like they're on steroids. And that's before we get to the grid reliability mess that can turn affordable into unpredictable overnight. Where does the pressure actually come from? Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. So let's talk about the first Texas scam that's totally legal. The starter neighborhood that starts acting like a luxury brand the second you update your address. Because you moved here for affordability, right? Lower taxes, more space, some breathing room. But then you look around and suddenly the basic little block with modest houses and regular people rules has a waitlist energy. The coffee costs more. The rent listing has inquire instead of a price. And the open house feels like a sneaker drop. Here's the sales pitch that pulls everyone in. Sunbelt jobs keep multiplying, companies keep planting flags, and people keep arriving. Plus, Texas has a high birth rate, so demand doesn't only come from moving trucks. The headlines stay stuck on Texas is booming, and you hear personal income was projected to outpace the US in 2022 to 23. So it sounds like you're stepping onto the right moving walkway. More jobs, more pay, more opportunity. Clean, simple. But here's the catch. The same growth that boosts paychecks turns normal housing into a ticketed event. Too many people show up at the same time, and there aren't enough places ready when they need them. Nobody wants to hear this part because it ruins the good problem to have vibe. Yet your lease doesn't care about vibes. Gentrification sounds like a fancy word for new restaurants. But the real mechanism is brutally basic. When housing inventory gets tight, buyers and renters don't evaporate. They compete, they bid. They offer longer leases, bigger deposits, faster closes, fewer repairs requested. And when they lose, they don't go home. They spill into the next neighborhood over, then the next. That's how displacement works when nobody technically forces anybody out. Your costs just climb faster than your paycheck, and suddenly your budget has a trapdoor. Now anchor this in one number. 1.7 months of housing inventory. That's not a little low. That's a grocery store where the shelves look normal until you actually need something specific, and then it's gone, and everybody's circling with carts. If you need a place because your job starts, your kid is coming, your relationship ended, your landlord sold, your roommate bailed. Cool. You're now competing against everyone else's deadlines. Real-life deadlines, not casual browsing. And when the market finally adds supply, a lot of it comes with an attitude. High density doesn't automatically mean cheap. Sometimes it means smaller units at higher prices, thinner walls that turn your neighbor's Zoom calls into your podcast, and parking that feels like a side quest you didn't sign up for. Your square footage shrinks, your monthly payment doesn't, and the building sells you amenities you'll use twice, like a gym with 3 treadmills and a broken fan. Watch what happens on the same block when the incentives split. The landlord sees a rent comp from a newer place down the street and thinks, why not me? The newcomer looks at the new rent and still thinks, that's a deal compared to where I came from. The longtime resident looks at the new rent and realizes their exit ramp is closing because the neighborhood they could trade down to is already getting hit by the spillover wave. And the culture trade is real too. When commercial rents rise, the first places to disappear are the low-margin spots. Cheap food that kept you alive in your early 20s. The weird little shop with irregular hours. The DIY venue that smelled like dust and energy drinks. Chains can survive the rent hike. Local places can't. Growth doesn't just change who lives there. It changes what's allowed to exist there. So the real story behind the 1.7-month inventory crisis isn't just prices went up. It's a supply choke that turns every major life event into a bidding war. And that bidding war quietly rewrites whole neighborhoods while everybody pretends it's just the market. And the part that makes people mad? We're paying premium prices while the system that's supposed to build our way out of it is not keeping up. So how do you get a housing boom in Texas while construction workers are losing jobs in the same year? Are we building or aren't we? Go back to 2020. Texas shed more than 1.4 million jobs. Unemployment tripled between February and April. 10 out of 11 major industries took hits. That year didn't feel like a slowdown. It felt like someone unplugged the state and plugged it back in, and half the apps reopened sideways. Now here's the split that makes your brain itch. Construction employment fell in 2020, and people expected it to keep sliding into 2021. Yet single-family permits jumped 15.3% in 2020. At the same time, existing home prices moved fast, with the median roughly going from $245,000 to $265,000 in a year. Same Texas. Two completely different stories. But here's the catch. Housing demand can change in a weekend. One rate drop, one remote work policy, one wave of new residents, and suddenly your maybe next year move becomes, I need keys by the end of the month. Demand is an on/off switch. Supply is not. Supply is a slow freight train that can't swerve. First, you need land that makes sense. Then you need financing that still pencils out. Then you need permits and reviews. Then you need crews. Then you need materials that actually arrive. Then inspections. Then utilities. Then punch lists. And if any one of those gets jammed, the whole thing sits there like a half-loaded cart blocking the aisle while everyone behind it gets mad. That's why jobs can fall even while the order book looks crazy. Projects don't instantly translate into paychecks if the pipeline clogs. A builder can have a stack of planned homes and still pause starts because the lumber order is a mess, or the windows are delayed, or the lender gets nervous, or the city office is backed up. Paper demand is cute. Finished houses are what matter. Then there's the labor mismatch, which nobody wants to talk about because it's not a villain you can point at. The pandemic scrambled crews and subcontractors. People moved, people got sick, schedules broke. One trade couldn't start because another trade didn't finish, and suddenly you're paying for idle time while a timeline turns into a guessing game. And Texas metros didn't enter 2020 with unlimited capacity. Some places, especially Central Texas, already had strain in architecture, engineering, and construction talent. When that system gets stressed, bids go up. Not because everybody suddenly got greedy, but because there are only so many qualified hands and so many hours in a week. If 3 big projects need the same kind of crew at the same time, somebody pays extra and somebody waits. Meanwhile, you're down here living the consequences. You don't just pay more in rent, you pay in time. You tour more places and like fewer of them. You refresh listings like it's a part-time job. You settle for a unit that costs like an iPhone payment plan every month but somehow comes with loud hallways and parking drama. And when supply can't respond fast enough, growth doesn't stop. It reroutes. People leapfrog outward. They go past the close-in neighborhoods and land in the affordable ring suburbs, which stay affordable for about 5 minutes because now they're the new target. The commute stretches. The car becomes your second apartment. Don't even get me started on the drivers. So payoff number 2 is this. Construction jobs falling while prices surge isn't magic. It's a supply chain plus labor plus permitting choke, where demand shows up now, and the ability to deliver housing shows up later, if it shows up at all. And if you think the only cost is rent, wait until you see how Texas tried to keep revenue stable during the chaos. And what happens when the grid becomes part of your cost of living. So here's the thing about Texas. It didn't get expensive the coastal way. It got scarce. Scarcity means your rent climbs, your drive stretches, and the neighborhood stuff you actually liked gets replaced by whoever can pay the new commercial rent. Treat Texas strong like a deal sheet, not a slogan. Before you move or sign anything, ask, what's the housing pipeline right here? Permits, inventory, new supply, and is it real or just a rendering? Then ask the boring question that isn't boring. Reliability risk, utility upgrades, winterization progress, outage history.